Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm doing the Your Answer Can't Be Books tag. I was tagged by Courtney Ferriter. This is a tag by the BookTubers, which I have only heard of recently, so we'll have to check out. It is quite dark in Canada. We haven't seen the sun in a few days at least, so that's why the light is on and probably going to be on for the next couple tag videos because I'm going to do a batch recording here. What is something that you own way too many of other than books? Well, one of my first jobs was working at a now defunct video store called Rogers Video, and yes, I even worked a little bit at Blockbuster, also gone. So I have so many DVDs. I'm quite the cinephile, more so previously than now. I still like watching movies and have been buying my favorite stuff on 4K in high dynamic range, which is the color representation is much better and movies really pop. It looks pretty amazing. And I've only done that because my TV broke last Christmas and I bought a new one and it happened to be 4K. But I have to say, the technology is pretty amazing. I didn't think it would be such a leap as like DVD to Blu-ray, but the colors really do make a difference. I don't know about too much vinyl. I used to collect a lot. I have about 500, and I will have, I'll purchase maybe like 5 a year, something like that. I'll be very selective about buying very specific albums, usually only online, because here in this small town, the only shops we have is Walmart, Mark's Work Warehouse, Canadian Tire, and some grocery stores. That's it. Oh, and a Shoppers Drug Mart. What is something that you do for fun that isn't reading? I'm pretty much always thinking about designing games, which is when I used to be an operations manager. They went under in Canada when COVID started happening, but I had quit that company for moral and ethical reasons about a year before that, one summer previous to COVID. And so I turned a hobby into me being a working author now, and I design tabletop role-playing games, most of which people would only know as maybe like Dungeons and Dragons, although I brought it up to Roz before from Scallydandling about the books, and her son is into role-playing games and she knew exactly what I was talking about. And so I guess you just don't really know how much people know about it. I'm in a very indie space, meaning independently published, small press. Generally, the space that I work in creatively is a reaction to traditional role-playing game design such as Dungeons and Dragons, so those games aren't my favorite, and I'm sort of in a community of people that are thinking up different ways to play games. Generally, those games are called story games or social fiction, collaborative fiction, stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting games coming out of that space, and games are in all shapes and sizes now. This game is one of my favorites. Dialect is a language game about you and your fellow players are put into a situation, a fictional situation, of course, and it could be science fiction, it could be historical fiction or whatever. You're isolated and you have to form your own actual language using the rules of the game to communicate, and you tell a story in that manner. There's games as small as pamphlets. Zines are sort of coming back, like from the punk days, essentially trying to disseminate information freely, cheaply. Games that are made very small but still have very high quality. These games tend to be from sort of auteurs, where we're doing the design, the writing, the layout, and everything as much as possible. So it's one of the last sort of auteur spaces, which is part of the main thrust of criticism with tabletop games these days. Here's another one that's sort of an odd format. Here's one of my own games to compare the size. This is one of the first sort of PBTA powered by the Apocalypse games in the indie space. And as you can see, it's quite different. In this one, there are separate rules if you're playing a woman or a man to sort of point a spotlight on the roles and traditions of those people in this society. So it is meant to be a sort of educational game as well. I had a few of my games actually translated into different languages. The most popular seems to be Spanish, and this they made my game even cooler than what I made it. This is a game in which I thought that it would be fun if every single session that you played with your friends emulated a TV show with a different genre that you were trying to emulate, and each one shot had interconnective tissue, and so you were telling like a larger plot about the world in a urban supernatural fiction environment, but at like very low stakes, very low cognitive load. And so they actually decided to make every single game that I put in the book a small little game of itself. Pretty neat, I thought. With higher production values than I could do myself even. They had a little crowdfunding campaign and designed this little package that people could buy. Got French flaps and everything. This one is where you play old people in a sort of Bubba Hotep type situation. You're all at an old folks home and a supernatural event occurs and you have to band together and try to solve the mystery. And then there's even like a liminal space where people are working in traditional publishing, where they're trying to bridge indie principles with traditional principles. Sometimes we call these books tradindies, just as a fun thing. For instance, Cavalier of Mars by Rose Bailey. She pretty much put this whole thing together. This is print-on-demand printing with specific layout. And this sort of looks like a traditional role-playing like Dungeons and Dragons. It's full page, but it's quite different, as you can see. So it's kind of an exciting time to be designing in that space. I'm always thinking about if something I'm consuming is gameable, if it should be gameable. Gamifying your hobbies is a very gig economy millennial thing, but if I didn't have that, you know, I would be completely out of work instead of a working author and, you know, published. So what is something special or important on your nightstand that's not a book? I sleep in a bed that is very like in a tucked in nook thing, so I have a shelf above me, and the only thing on it is books, I'm afraid. So I have a pretty nice watch that I bought from Korea that is definitely fake, but it is covered in dust and needs to be cleaned. It's not working right now, so you can't see it. What is something that you buy at a bookstore other than books? Movies, sometimes vinyl, depending on the store. Here there's Chapters or Indigo, which has like a lot of different stuff. It's probably like a Barnes & Noble comparable type thing where they have seasonal gifts. But I pretty much only walk into a bookstore looking to buy a book. Although there's some pretty cool ones in the city in Calgary these days where the bookstores where you can sit down and play a board game, and you can also get a coffee. There's like a barista and stuff there too, so maybe that counts. What's a fun gift that you've received that wasn't a book or a gift card for books? My parents got me a panini press. I'm pretty fond of that. For a while there, I had a Gordon Ramsay toaster oven, which was tyrannical. Like, it doesn't let you set your own times for things. You have to tell it sort of what you're cooking in it, and then it presupposes the exact temperature that you want, which is very Gordon Ramsay. And to an infuriating degree, it actually was quite correct about things. But then for an annoying thing, if it wasn't one of the specific foods listed, you had to sort of like hackney ad hoc, sort of change or get an approximation of the thing that you're trying to cook in there. So it's wild that it was even made, but it was the toaster oven given to me, so it was with me for 8 years. What's a YouTube channel that you watch that's not related to books? A lot of film stuff. Film Joy, Folding Ideas, Nerd Writer, any sort of like essayist type content in which it investigates the form of film or reviews a specific film, usually from a positive lens, is something that I'll generally enjoy. What are the top 5 booktubers that you'd want to know more about? Well, recently I found Attention, who I think is very popular on BookTube, but I only recently discovered. He seems pretty interesting, lots of cool video content, sort of essayist type things. I saw somebody tag Apocalypse Reading in a video, and from there I springboarded into like a whole bunch of their older content and stuff, and that channel is awesome. Like some of the best reviews that I've ever seen. Don't know anything about them because they only speak about books. I'm not sure if I even know their pronouns because all they talk about is the book. Everyone else, I think, sort of updates people during their videos as to what's going on with them, so I'm not really sure who else this would apply to. If I follow anyone, you can be sure that I'm interested in knowing A, their opinion about books, and B, more things about them.